Sins of a Solar Empire 2 is an ambitious and interesting take on 4X and real-time strategy gaming. Inspired, of course, by the classic, what makes it unique? How does it play? How has it changed? Let's have a chat about it in this video, with my thanks to Stardock for sponsoring it and supporting the channel. You can click through my link in the description down below for a closer look at Sins of a Solar Empire 2, where you'll quickly discover that it's a 4X strategy game in every traditional sense. Explore, expand, exploit, and of course, exterminate. And the four of these come together to build that picture. I feel a need to mention them here, by the way, because every time I do, there'll be many people in the comments who go, oh, thanks, I forgot, or I didn't know what it meant, but so many people have said it. So there you go. Sins 2 delves into all of those features very well, taking a slightly different approach toward them for each of its three core races, spawning a total of 6 playable factions. Take the Visari, for example, the 10,000-some-year-old faction former ruler of an uber number of planets, not really having a traditional use for money, in this case credits. Instead, if they want to acquire it for certain interactions, they'll need to do so through things like in-game auctions, events, or trades. And of course, they make up for this in other ways, for all factions will have, as you might expect, their unique units, unique abilities, items, as well as technologies. Another place where you'll get that core 4X experience from Sins 2, that's planet development, in a slightly different way or form. A way that I feel really emphasizes opportunity cost and choice with a very pressing pacing going on behind you. And we'll talk more about that pacing in a moment. Firstly though, here we're talking about a balance. A balance between which planetary or orbital constructions, improvements that you'll build in a often very limited number of slots per system, per planet that you capture. On the one hand, the research builds for both civilian and the separate military technology trees will provide you with access to more advanced tiers of those technologies. But if you don't invest in one of the defensive structures, then you might just lose all of that, all of it for naught. Further still, what about actually exploiting the resources, sometimes exotic, sometimes core resources, core currencies within the system? You won't be able to do all of it, so you can only but choose to do some. And with that stressor, potentially, of course, balanced against the timer, which obviously you can pause. It's a real-time game, a fully pausable game. Speed it up, slow it down, however you like. But all of those decisions, very 4X in nature, they're happening in an environment without turns. For, as you've probably already noticed, as I mentioned in the introduction, and obviously it has a pause button, Sins 2 is a real-time strategy game. And this is one that doesn't just sort of throw those terms around in a very superficial way. It's not just a superficial blend of 4X and real-time. And one of, if not my absolute favorite example of this, is how truly dynamic the world, the universe is. And the best way to show it is how it changes over time. And thankfully, Sins 2 lets us do just that through the future orbit, simulating an hour's worth of in-game time ahead to show you how the planets will interact, and those lanes, those connections between them, obviously fundamental for how troops move around. And zooming out just a little bit more, you'll get a sense of just how important this is. In this example, I'm the red player over on the left-hand side, probably eyeing up a planet next door to me for expansion, just like that red one. Now, as I want to move across to that as my 4th expansion, I might think it's a comfortable, fairly safe and easy grab. However, as we move through the game, it will actually shift away from me, no longer being a direct connect until right at the very end of this hour-long cycle again, where it will finally connect up. However, for much of its life, and indeed its future life, it won't be directly connected to me. It will actually be far closer connected to an independent faction. Pirates, in this case, perhaps likely to raid it, and I'll need to keep that in mind. Speaking of pirates and raids, that brings us on to combat. The battles also take place within that real-time world, and without any additional, albeit maybe temporary, barriers or combat views. These battles utilize the environment literally around them, which of course is also moving, to provide cover or ambush opportunities. In single player, this is how you'll probably fight in one of the now many scenarios, with different settings and speeds to set to your desired tastes accordingly. Mine are very fast-paced, and thankfully some of the other changes that have come to the game recently-ish over the last few months have helped with that pacing as well. Alternatively, you could be playing perhaps with mods or in a multiplayer game of up to 10 players. Somewhere else, I think that Sins of a Solar Empire 2 particularly shines. It seems to do multiplayer very well. Regardless of the mode, back to the combat, you will inevitably be fighting, whether it's just a small, accidental skirmish on the outskirts of a planet that's barely being utilized, or a full-on planetary invasion. You will need to, obviously, improve your research, get better units, get better ships, and send them in to fight. And I think it's important to note here that while you do that, the battles happening, as I mentioned, in real time in the real world, each element of them is being simulated here quite carefully as well. So as you improve, say, your anti-missile or defensive capabilities, you'll be able to intercept, shoot, and destroy incoming projectiles, for example, from enemy ships. And each one is simulated, each one can be damaged, each one can be destroyed. That level of detail, playing out in real time, can at times be a little bit hectic to manage. Again, thank goodness for the pause function. But ultimately, it helps to build what is a really interesting world, constantly balancing those aforementioned challenges, opportunity costs of what to build on each planet and within its orbit, as well as those fights which could pop up any old where at any old time. Now, while this video is a sponsored one, Sins of a Solar Empire 2 has been on my radar for quite some time, and I've been following it fairly closely. However, it's since its Steam release in August of 2024 where I think it's proven the best that it continues to receive significant support and updates, and so far, all of those have been free. The September update improved many things, including the AI and overall gameplay balancing. And in the Ruins of War update, we saw noticeable improvements to early game pacing, that thing that I mentioned earlier that I'm particularly fond of. Roughly the first 1 hour of gameplay has been revamped, and I think it has made, honestly, some pretty good steps in the right direction. That Ruins of War update also saw graphical improvements for certain types of ships and overall improvements for the gameplay more broadly. And as you can see from the roadmap that the team behind the game have published, all of the key improvements in their Season 1 have so far, at the time of recording, been ticked off. They've been met as of the last free game update. And the further changes that you can see coming to the right-hand side here of the diagram are all planned within that Season 1. And these changes are, of course, also due alongside the first paid scenario pack, Paths to Power, the first DLC of many more and accompanying free updates to come. Sins 2 clearly has a very healthy future ahead of it, with further updates, further packs planned ahead of those ones. I think that its progress so far, particularly of course looking at that relatively short window between August of 2024 and now, at the time of recording and then publishing this video, the game has seen a significant number of regular monthly updates and plenty more content on the way. The one thing that I'd like to leave you with, a bit of a broad idea, bear with me, is that above all else, Sins of a Solar Empire 2 delves into one thing, one cliche very well. It's that idea of being easy to pick up, yet difficult to master. That idea that actually you can probably just jump into this game and play it. Have you played a strategy game before? do you know what space is? Then you'll probably be just fine to pick up Sins of a Solar Empire 2. However, it's very likely, especially if you crank that AI difficulty up or you're playing against real people who know what they're doing, that you're going to get your butt kicked. And that's probably because you don't fully understand the intricacies, the efficiencies, which worlds to move to first, what to get, what kind of opportunity cost, what sort of balance do you want to strike, and where should you strike with your ships. Easy to pick up, difficult to master. Thank you very much for joining me and this look at Sins of a Solar Empire 2. And thanks again to Stardock for sponsoring this video. If you would like to check out this wonderful blend of 4X and real-time strategy, do click through my link below and have a look at Sins 2 for yourself. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next time.